have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.
Welcome, everyone. I'm excited for this conversation with a good friend of mine. You know, many of us have to deal with all kinds of obstacles, and this will be a story today of resilience, of an unbelievable attitude, and a huge impact with an unbelievable purpose. I'm here with a good friend of mine today. His name is Paul De Jong. And Paul, before we kick this thing off, I called this Beyond Bricks. And the reason I call this Beyond Bricks is because when we look at life, there's this brick wall. And when something comes our way, I believe that we only have a few choices to make when those challenges come. We either can go through the wall, around the wall, over the wall, or under the wall. But we really don't have a choice to stay right where we're at. So it's just, how can we show resilience? How do we keep a positive attitude? And we never know what the good Lord has in store for us.
No, we don't. Health can change and suddenly, whether it be a auto accident, a slow progressive disease like Parkinson's. I was diagnosed at 53 years old. So my life changed abruptly. I was blessed earlier, 20 years ago, to go back up a little bit. I had necrotizing fasciitis.
Say that one more time.
Necrotizing fasciitis.
Okay. Tell us about that.
So in layman's terms, that's flesh-eating infection. So my wife and I had been to Cozumel, and I had an insect bite, which they think was a spider bite, and that doesn't necessarily turn into necrotizing fasciitis, but the cells kind of crossed and it turned into it's a strep A infection that you have to remove the flesh. You fight it like a wildfire. It's an infection that's quite often fatal. And to fight it, you have to fight it like a wildfire. You have to remove, because it kills soft tissue at 1 inch an hour. So after 17 surgeries in 2 days, they finally got ahead of it. They stopped it right in my upper leg, so they removed my IT band, which is a tendon, and then I had multiple graft surgeries, so that left me with chronic pain for many years, and I still have that, although it is starting to lessen because over time the nerves start reconnecting again. But through that time, I was always on methadone, which is an opioid, which I wanted to change that, and that was one of the tougher challenges after being on that for 12 years. At that point, I started noticing, and my loved ones started noticing I was dragging my feet and not swinging my arm. So reluctantly, I went to the doctor, set up an appointment. He says, I got two things. I either want you to go to Iowa City, Paul, or to Rochester and confirm, because I think you have Parkinson's disease. And the first thing I thought, I'm too young to have Parkinson's disease. And I had seen what it ravaged my father with. It was a sorry end, which everybody's different. And he had Lewy body dementia, so I was terrified to hear that because I had just went through his death. That was like deja vu all over again. So that's kind of backing up. And then it just continued to get worse. My sleep patterns were showed up. And then I had the neuropathy from the earlier necrotizing fasciitis, so my life was kind of in shambles. And as my doctor told me, the best thing to do, Paul, is get rid of some stress in your life. So I started selling my shares of Landscape Garden Center over a period of time. And then everything collided. So then I was unable. I had 2 accidents because I couldn't react fast enough, so I gave up the right to drive. I had to move out of my house. My marriage ended quite unexpectedly, so I was in dire straits. I didn't know how I could pull myself up, and that's right, you don't stop at the wall, but there's times you hesitate and have to figure out how to navigate around it. That's what I did, because that was the pit of sadness. I was in dire straits, and I leaned on my faith and my children. That's the only thing that got me through. And then one thing, I remember it was a Saturday morning. I was about the depths of my sadness, and it was like 5:30 in the morning. I was used to going to work at 4 or 5 in the morning. It was Saturday morning, so I thought, I don't have to go in. I don't have to be there. And then it was like a message from God. There was the blinds closed on the bedroom window and we were half sleeping, half awake. And I dreamt that the clouds were open and I seen an image of Jesus. And I woke up and the thing was, I wasn't scared. I thought, well, this is the second coming of Christ. And I looked and the sun was shining at an angle through the many blinds. So I thought, no, me of little faith, no, was that a coincidence or is that a message from God? But it sounds kind of very far-fetched, but just that glimpse of the sun through there, then I'm going to make it through this. So then I was on the Arboretum board, and then Heather Kittlesons, who was in attendance today, she asked me, she started this podcast, Fortitude, which is doing very well. And I was one of her guests on that. And kind of told my story that was currently happening. And I felt so alone at that point. But from then on, when we have problems, we don't want to stay in the dark and stay in despair. We got to get out and be with people. So by doing that Fortitude podcast was another gift from God, and Heather has been too, because that gave me a second lease on life, start working back, getting over that brick wall. But then once you scale the brick wall, I always say, if you're going to build a brick wall, you don't start out and say, I'm going to build this kick-ass wall. What you do, you start, like when you're doing a patio, you start out, you're going to lay one brick as perfectly as you can every time. And each time you lay a brick, you try to do it perfectly. So then after that, you have this perfect wall, and then you can start you've made the rebound, and then you can build your own platform.
So I mean, what a story. And you inspire many of us by how positive you stay. So I don't think it was coincidence that sun coming in. I think that's what was the Holy Spirit wrapping around you.
I agree, because it gave me hope, and then things started to fall in place. And it was a long, hard road. It took me, what was that, 3 years ago already? And just the last 6-8 months, I can feel not always happiness, because my disease is progressing. Like my speech has been affected, but I can start to feel joy, not necessarily happiness, but joy and happiness are two different things. And my relationship with God, I know we're here for just a temporary time on earth, so this is just a short bit of suffering, so-called. And I wouldn't even call it suffering, because you can choose how your day is going to go. And you know that. You've said that many times. And I try to tell my kids that you choose your attitude. It can either be good or bad. You can try to inspire people or mope around and try to play the victim.
Mm-hmm. So I want you to pull apart for a minute, because I think it's super important for all of us. The difference between joy and happiness. Explain the difference for me.
Well, the way I read it is happiness is the result of an outcome. So if you win the basketball game or win a poker game, you're happy. But joy is something that comes from God. That comes within you. You wake up in the morning full of joy and peace, not always understanding, because you got peace and understanding. But you got to keep the peace about you, because it's going to tear you apart to have resentment towards anyone. And I can't say, if they want to be my enemy, that's up to them. But I try not to have anybody I might have wronged. I try to make peace with them. And I think we should all do that. I know with the world events, I can't imagine we're at war in, 2025. Oh, we're so barbaric yet that we go to that depth. It seems barbaric, and we should be well past that as human beings.
I agree. So here's what I'm hearing there, Paul, is, happiness ends up being extrinsic, something we chase, like what you said is an outcome. Joy, no matter what our circumstances, we know we got a Lord and Savior that loves us. We know we got people that will come around us. Joy is more intrinsic.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, Paul, you and I have known each other a long time. we've sat and watched our girls play basketball, mini basketball games. The girls have been Lexi, and I call her Mad Dog. I don't know if anybody else calls
Yeah,
her
I
Mad
call her
Dog.
many names. Mandy Gator.
Yeah. So just watching those two and just their friendship that they've nurtured. You and I have had the opportunity to get to know each other for so many years, watching those games, watching those girls grow. And then also you helping me probably create my favorite place that I love, and that's my backyard. And how you just help craft and had so many good ideas and worked along Sam to do that. But as I've watched you and listened to you, I mean, Paul, you were very instrumental in building landscape gardens to an amazing business. You were an avid runner. I mean, you were so active, one of the hardest working guys I've ever seen. And life throws this curveball at you with all these things, and you've maintained that resilience. You've maintained that passion for life. It also I like what you said about sitting on that wall for a second and just reflecting. I think we got to do that more often. I know I need to do that more often. But there's a statement you've come up talk about is bloom where you're planted. Talk to me about that.
Well, I came back. I remember when I was a kid on the farm, my mother had a magnet on the fridge, and it was a distant memory I hadn't thought about in years. And there was a flower on it that said, bloom where you're planted. And when I went through some of that, the tougher moments in life, I sold my house. I put it on the market, and it sold in the first day, which I was like, darn, I wasn't quite ready. So October 5th would be 2 years. I went to Touchmark, independent living, and I was I 61 years old or 60, doesn't matter. So I was the young buck in the block, and I wasn't, moving from my house where the kids grew up, and I spent a good share of my marriage. It was I remember the last night, I wanted to just sleep there one more night. There's the TV and my recliner left. And then they had to inspect it, so I had to go that one day. So I went there, and they decided, I'm gonna try to change as many lives as I can by going here. I'm gonna try to be instrumental in helping some of these elder states have a better quality of life. Hopefully I've done that, but to be honest with you, I've gained more knowledge and wisdom from some of the elder statesmen there, and I think they like, because I'm somehow a well-known guy in there, so and my hands don't work very well, so cutting this, like when we went out to Crawford's that night, I believe you cut my steak, and there's these 90-year-old ladies cutting up my food for me and helping me with chairs. I'm like, what's wrong with this picture? Or Heather's loading my walker in the back car, and I'm sitting here like, what kind of wimp am I? But you just have to, first they put up resistance against people helping me, but then people say, my mother says, people want to help you, it brings them joy, so let them help you. So, but I'm starting to get when I go through breakfast, it's kind of a continental breakfast at Touchmark. There's all these ladies jumping up. I can get it, but I let them take care of me, because that's what brings them happiness. So I've been affected in a positive way much more than I gave the positive vibes out. So to get long story short, when I walked in that door, I said, this is where I'm planted, and this is where I'm going to try to have the most impact I can with my ministry. Because like Stephen Shield, when we went to God as the CEO, and he was an excellent speaker, he said, you can claim to be a Christian and have all these posters up in your office wall. He said, if you don't play the part, people observe how you act. And that's how I always played it during my career, too. I didn't come out and try to minister to somebody, but a lot of times people would work with me 6-8 months, and they'd see a kind of an even Stephen, and they'd say, how do you do it? And they knew some of the challenges I was up against. And only by the grace of God can we give us a steadiness to follow through with things. So that way you have an impact. Like one story, I do a lot of reading, and this predates a lot of people that are listening to this, but John Wooden was a legendary UCLA coach. Famous, he had, 12 national championships in a row. And somebody came to interview him during the week, and he was sweeping the gym floor. So, and then it goes on to say, if you want to make an impact, grab your broom. So it doesn't mean literally grab your broom, but you can have an impact by doing the simple things right. And that's what life is all about. We can make it real complicated, but in a business or anything, it starts with the basics. And that's human kindness and humbleness.
What's some other things you read? You and I were talking one day about different books and podcasts. And I love John Wooden, so I love that story. So what's some other things you're reading right now? Because don't you believe this, Paul? We conform to what we consume. If we consume garbage and negativity, it's hard to bloom where you're planted because you just got all that internal stuff going on. So I think we have to read and be around the right kinds of people like Heather and reading things to put into our brains and in our souls, like reading the good book, the Bible, on a regular basis. But you have some favorite authors too, you were telling me about, that you like listening to.
Yes, mostly speakers like Denzel Washington comes off as a very good man. Will Smith was very motivational. Now it's a little bit questionable the last 2-3 years, but he's overcome a lot of obstacles. Another one is Matthew McConaughey. And if you go back, this is an oldie, I think it's the 2014 Oscars. He received an Oscar and he spoke of his hero. His hero asked him, he was 15, he came up to him. Well, this gentleman asked him, "Who's your hero?" And he said, "Let me think about it. That's a big question." And he came back 10 years later and says, "Are you your hero?" And he's like, No, it's me in another 10 years. Because we can have all these outside heroes that a lot of times let us down, but we should be our own hero, not in an arrogant way, but it keeps us fighting to keep on pushing, reaching us to new levels.
I love that, Oscar. Yeah, anybody hasn't seen that, go listen to that. He's got a new book out too now called Poems and Prayers. I just read it over the weekend. You'd like it.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy.
Have you read Green Lights?
I started on it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Okay, so I want to stay with this bloom where you're planted idea. So you have recently been involved with the book project. Talk to us about that book.
Yes, that was kind of a lifelong goal. After my health turn, I thought I got to say something to stay motivated in life. So Heather and I had met on the Arboretum board, and I had talked about this with Mike Cooper, and then Heather asked, "What's your dream?" And I said, "Well, I want to put together a book on trees." So we came up, Heather and I were driving around by the Pettigrew Museum. There was a tree next to a horse. It was a horse stable converted into garage, one of those historical homes there. And I said, if that tree could talk, the stories it could tell, because it was pre-automobile and the tree was still standing strong. And then Heather came up with the name, if our trees could talk, which turned out to be I love that title immediately. So then that was a long drawn out process. Mike Cooper and I put on many miles locating these trees because I had seen them before, but I never logged the addresses. So we about had 5 accidents gazing at trees. So we put on a lot of miles. Heather helped assemble a team, and we got it finished. It took a while with my health, and life happens. Death in one of the family. Jeremy Brown was the publisher on that. His father passed away in the meantime, so we were pleased to have it finished. The commemorative collector's editions just came in. I got to go sign books this afternoon, so that's a upscale edition. I think Sarah ordered one of those.
Yeah, we We did. And so where do people find that book? Because it's a great book.
Well, it's currently in Ace Hardware and Lewis Drug. There's a few in Crossroads, and I don't believe it. I don't know if it's in Shields, but we had a few copies in Shields. And then of course, they can get it at the Arboretum.
Okay.
But
Can they get it online?
not online. We tried to keep it locally
Okay,
sourced.
just keep it. Got it. Okay.
So I think we've sold about 1,700 books. We initially had 2,000 printed. Now there's 250 collectors, which I think most of those are accounted for, but they're still available.
Mm-hmm. So last time you and I were together, we talked about how you like to go and just sit in nature and have liked to do that for a lot of years in looking at the trees. And I think, if I remember right, your favorite tree is the oak tree.
Yes.
And so when you were talking to me, and I think it pressed in me as well, is that time to be out in nature and what it does to rejuvenate our spirit and our minds, and just recognizing God's beautiful creation and being just in a state of gratitude and in awe of that. It's almost like a prayer. So what advice would you give to these listeners about encouraging them to be in nature?
Well, it's one way to clear your mind. I think one of my favorite trips was my cousin and uncle and his brothers and his brother-in-law and my two sons, and I went to Northern California. I had never experienced the redwood trees. And to stand there and look up, and it's like there's no sound. You could hear a needle drop. In fact, I don't think I even heard birds. And then there's this mountain stream where a confluence is where two streams meet. I got pictures of it. Pictures never do it justice, but and I was just in the towering redwoods there. It was such a spiritual event in my life. And that was early on in my Parkinson's journey, so I was able to walk with a walking stick yet. So that's one trip I could easily go back and do again. Mm-hmm. But just in another instance, this was last fall, there's this giant cottonwood tree. And it was yellow fall color, and it was a Sunday evening, and the wind was blowing hard, so those leaves were coming off this huge tree in drifts, and cottonwoods are like quaking aspen. They make this rustling sound. And it was almost like a locomotive going through, and there again was another spiritual experience, because just these drifts of leaves and all the seasons, because we get so stressed in life for the coming week or the coming, and these trees have gone through different seasons for centuries. So I read something else that kind of got me. Trees lose everything they have in the fall season of their life, only to relief or rebloom the following spring, but they lose everything. Like individuals can feel like they lost everything, but they can still rebloom again. And like bloom where you're planted. Mm-hmm. And we all go through different difficult periods of our life.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great metaphor, though, Paul, for life. I mean, Solomon talks about it in Ecclesiastes, the different seasons of life. And I just, now that you, painted that picture for me of trees and going through the different seasons, you never expected this season, right?
I expected to be on a golf course or traveling or still working. Mm-hmm. So we just got to rebound somehow and try to make yourself as useful. But it's about my faith in the individuals I've surrounded myself with. That's, I think, what's the saying? You are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. Mm-hmm. I know you're in a great group of guys there that you get together for Bible study, mm-hmm. and you just elevate each other. You make yourself a better version of yourself by being with positive, successful people like that. And how do you define success? My net worth would have been much. I had these financial goals that I wanted to be at this plateau at 40, able to retire at 50. And I guess I hit those goals, and I thought this would be the most financially part of my life, but it's not. But I can say God blessed me richly, so I'm able to, no matter how many days I have left, whether it's a year, 10 years, I don't know, but I'm blessed. And money buys you no happiness. like Warren Buffett say, you get to a certain point and it's just, you can make it destroy you or you can do good with it.
Mm-hmm. So as you think about right now, how old are you?
I'll be 64 in November,
64.
still 63.
Okay, so each day as you think about how you're going to bloom where you're planted, you talked about some of how you're impacting people at Touchmark. You worked on this project with this book, which is a great legacy project, which learned a lot. You know, sitting down with me today and telling your story, I know inspires me and will inspire the people that listen to it. So what keeps you focused each and every day? You said your faith is important, so you're reading the Bible on a regular basis. You said you got to be around the right kinds of people, so you're being very intentional to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people. So as you look at each day right now, and whenever the good Lord decides to call you home, what do you want people to remember about Paul De Jong?
He kept his composure in some difficult times in life and tried to look at the positive. And basically, I just want to be remembered as a good man where my kids can talk to somebody and say, your dad was a good man. That's a simplistic way to look at it. I don't look at it as being an amazing businessman or success. In how do we define success? Mm-hmm. You know, were we good with our families? Were we good to our parents? All those things are part of success. We can't measure that. We're in a monetary society, and I have no problem with money. There's nothing wrong. You can bless a lot of people with money, but that's what God tells us to do. So we can bless things I can't do. Maybe I can help somebody else get on their feet, or if somebody's has some medical injuries or something that their financial status is jeopardized. You know, we as businessmen or former businessmen can help them out financially in certain ways, and just share a story. Like, God's given me a pulpit. Like, I would never be here today. I probably never wrote a book. I'd have never been on Fortitude. But God, if I had no outward problems in life, my testimony wouldn't be near as effective as it is now. And I try to look at what I can do in life. Like I warned you, my words don't spit out, and I'm not as eloquent as I used to be. But I can still give it a try, and there's a lot of things I can't do, but there's many more things I can do.
What a beautiful perspective.
And believe me, I stumble and fall, and that nighttime there's a couple hours where I call them, I can't go to sleep fast enough, because then it gets kind of low, and problems always magnified during the night for all of us. Like when I was in business too, you get stuck on one thing because as you know, the garden center landscape company is very seasonal, so it's feast or famine. So if your weather's not cooperating in the spring, that can really affect your bottom line for the year. So people in business, you have to take bullets and keep standing. You have to be resilient, because a lot of times you always have to be consistent, be a person of integrity, even if it means, and you go by a handshake. I know in this world we got to go with contracts and attorneys and whatnot, but my dad always brought me up, when you shake somebody's hands and agree to something, that's what you stick by. And if it was only that simple nowadays.
Not the truth. So I'm just curious, because I think what you just said, I think we can all relate to that those times at night where our brains start messing with us. What gets you frustrated these days at night? What's going through your head, and how do you deal with it?
I think I've been doing everything possible, and I did from the start, for my diagnosis with Parkinson's. As you move forward in physical therapy and physical activity and just staying involved is the best. There's no magic bullet to stop it. You just got to stay active, keep your mind engaged, keep your body engaged. That slows the process down. And I think I've been following most of those rules, but I kind of measure it by quarters. or from a year ago, I've declined in many areas, and each quarter, and it's hard to measure by months. But eventually, I'll get promoted. It means like I just recently got promoted. I'm going from independent living to assisted living, and I like where I live, and didn't necessarily want to go up a floor. I'm on the 3rd floor now. But I think I told a couple people I'm looking at it as a promotion, because you can either look at it as good or bad. And then someday we all get promoted to heaven.
Amen, brother. So here's what I love about this conversation is that no matter what's happened, perspective is everything, right?
Yes, indeed. People can't judge you by past deeds. It's all about looking forward. And we can't look back with regrets because we do the best we can at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's my encouragement. As you listen to Paul's story today, his faith, his ability to pause and really focus on what's important and finding that inner joy versus that external, chasing after that external happiness. Perspective. I think your story of I get promoted. And one day we're all going to get promoted to heaven.
Yes, exactly. We can't see it as the end. It's only the beginning.
Well, Paul, so what's next? What's the next big thing you want to do?
I'm in the process. I'm working on another book that's going to include All Saints neighborhood and try to mash them together with McKinnon Park. There's 30 trees it would be GPS located. So it's kind of like a scavenger hunt. And there's some historic or Paulisms in there too, some nuggets of so-called Paul BS or wisdom, whatever you want to refer to it as. Because there's so much history in the neighborhood. I ride around in my scooter a lot. I'm the crazy old guy that bends over riding around the neighborhoods. And I've met so many people that way. I've made a lot of friends going back and forth. I was in McKinnon Park this weekend, and that's one of the gyms in the city. Mm-hmm. And then after that, this would be in conjunction with the Arboretum. Mike Cooper and I have talked about it. I think Heather's been on this conversation where we develop, you've heard the University of Okoboji, really. Mm-hmm. So I have like a t-shirt for kids like 6 to 10 years old. And I have a book with probably 10 species of trees, and they have to identify each of those. And they get this jersey type shirt, and then they get a diploma of completion after that. Mm. And it's targeting that 8 to 10-year-old, and that can be taught as a course at the Arboretum.
Love it.
And that's still a pipe dream, but I think we can make it happen.
Well, I like how you just keep going, and you've got ideas, and you've inspired me. I've known you for a long time, and I've watched you navigate all the things you've navigated, and it's keeps things in perspective, and it will help even the people that listen to this. There's a lot to learn. So as you guys listen to this, and you listen to Paul, and you listen to his story, connecting with your faith, finding the people that are around you, keeping that great perspective, and staying resilient no matter what. Paul, it's been a pleasure knowing you. Thank you for sitting down with me and having this conversation. I know it will impact a lot of people.
Thank you.
Have paradigms and roadblocks that prevent us from excelling, and they can be real or imagined. Welcome to Beyond Bricks, a podcast that will give you the ability to break through those walls. Here's Dr. Nathan Unruh.